My brother slept with my fiancée before our wedding, and now my family wants me to forgive them. I told them to off and moved away. It's a long story, but it's just as crazy as it sounds. I'll try to be as succinct as possible, but there's a lot to cover here. I don't care if anyone believes this or not, it's so absurd that I need to vent. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, but I will omit any specifics that could identify me to anyone who is unfamiliar with the scenario. I'm 2 years old, and until a few months ago, I was engaged to my 5-year girlfriend, who we'll call Sarah. My younger brother Mike is 29 and has always been the golden child in our family. To truly understand how this betrayal has hit me so hard, I need to give you some background on my family and how we arrived at this point. Growing up, Mike could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, whereas I was always getting in trouble and punished for the smallest things. It wasn't just a bit of sibling rivalry or favoritism, it was obvious and intense. Mike would break something and I would get the blame. He'd start a fight and I'd get grounded. If we both got straight A's, he'd get a new video game console and I'd get a pat on the back and a reminder. If we both got straight A's, Mike would get a new video game console. If he started a fight, I'd get grounded. Our parents, Tom and Linda, were always making excuses for their actions. Mike's younger, so he needs more attention, you're the older one, you should know better, or Mike's just more sensitive. We have to be careful with him. The constant false standards and gaslighting made me feel useless and despised in myself. As we got older. It became more obvious when I got into a good college on a partial scholarship. My parents hardly recognized it, but when Mike decided to go to community college, they threw him a huge party and bought him a car to travel in, even though I was biking 5 miles each way to my part-time job. I'd been working a job for years, but I moved out as quickly as possible to get away from the toxic environment at home. I supported myself through college by working 2 jobs and taking out loans, while Mike dropped out after 1 semester, saying college wasn't for him. Our parents were 100% behind his decision, saying he knew himself well and not conforming to societal expectations. They even financed his string of failed business enterprises over the following few years. No matter how much distance I tried to put between myself and my family, they always found a way to bring me back. Holiday dinners were a nightmare of subtle insults and not so subtle parallels. "Oh, you're still in that entry-level job?" Not following what most people expected, they even paid for his string of businesses to fail over the next few years. No matter how much distance I tried to put between myself and my family, they always found a way to bring me back. Holiday dinners were a nightmare of subtle insults and not so subtle hints. "Oh, you're still in that entry-level position? Well, Mike is thinking about starting another business. He's very entrepreneurial," even though I was getting a secure job while Mike was using our parents' retirement money. Despite everything I tried to keep my friendship with Mike, he was still my brother after all. However, it was always one, I'd reach out to him and try to reconnect, but either he'd ignore me or make the conversation into a game he could win. If I got a promotion, he'd suddenly have a big opportunity coming up. If I started dating someone, he'd end up in a serious relationship. I met Sarah while trying to get back together with Mike. She was a friend of one of his short-term girlfriends, and we got on straight away. Sarah was everything I wanted in a partner: funny, kind and stunningly beautiful. We started dating, and for the first time in my life I felt truly satisfied and valued. My folks weren't pleased though. They made sarcastic remarks about Sarah being out of my league and asked what she saw in me. Mike, on the other hand, became quite interested in my life. He was always asking about Sarah. I had a few girlfriends, and we got on really well straight away. Sarah was everything I wanted in a partner: funny, kind and stunningly beautiful. We started dating, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly satisfied and valued. My parents weren't pleased, of course. They made sarcastic remarks about Sarah being out of my league and asked what she saw in me. Mike, on the other hand, became quite interested in my life. He was always asking about Sarah, wanting to know everything about her. At the time, I was just relieved that he seemed to care about things in my life. Looking back, I should have noticed the red flags. Sarah and I moved in together after a year of dating, and it was fantastic. We both had solid professions, traveled and discussed the future. I began to believe that just maybe I could have the life I had always desired, a good profession, a loving partner and perhaps children. Eventually, I proposed to Sarah on our 4th anniversary. It was nothing fancy, just a simple supper at home and a moving speech. I was over the moon when she said yes. We planned to have a long engagement and spend our time arranging the wedding. We weren't rushing, we had our entire lives ahead of us, or so I thought. When we told my family about our engagement, their emotions were all over the place, to say the least. My mother put on a fake smile and, in the end, I asked Sarah to marry me on our 4th anniversary. It was nothing fancy, just a simple meal at home, with a speech I wrote myself. I was over the moon when she said yes. We planned to have a long engagement and spend our time arranging the wedding. We weren't rushing things. We had our entire lives ahead of us, or so I thought. When we told my family about our engagement, they had a range of reactions. My mother put on a fake smile and said, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that implied it was anything but. My father grunted and murmured, "Good luck with that," before going back to the television. Mike, however, had the weirdest reaction. He congratulated us, but there was something strange about his smile, almost predatory. I dismissed it at the time, attributing it to my own fears. The following year was filled with wedding plans and job stress. Sarah and I were both working long hours and I said, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that suggested it was anything but. My dad grunted and muttered, "Good luck with that," before going back to the TV. Mike, however, had the weirdest reaction. He congratulated us, but there was something strange about his smile, almost predatory. I brushed it off at the time, thinking it was just my own fears. The following year was filled with wedding plans and job stress. Sarah and I were both working long hours at our jobs to save up for the wedding and a down payment on a home. We didn't see each other as much as we used to, but I assumed it was just a phase. Every partnership goes through difficult times. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. Sarah grew distant, always on her phone, smiling at texts from people she swiftly dismissed as business friends. She began going out more, arriving home late and smelling of. We were saving for the wedding and a deposit on a house. We weren't seeing each other as much as we used to, but I thought it was just a phase. Every relationship has its challenges, right? Looking back, I should have seen the signs. Sarah was always on her phone, smiling at texts from people she quickly dismissed as business friends. She was going out more, arriving home late and smelling of wine and cologne. But I fully trusted her. I never thought she could be cheating, let alone with my own brother. Sarah was acting strangely about 4 months ago. She was moody, irritable and always nauseous. I was excited by the possibility that she might be pregnant. We hadn't tried, but we'd talked about having children in the future. I started planning how I'd help her, thinking about nursery colors and baby names. Then, one day, Sarah sat me down and we had a pretty intense chat. She said she was pregnant, but the baby wasn't mine. I couldn't believe it, especially because we hadn't been having much sex lately. I asked who the father was, and she said it was Mike. My whole world just fell apart. I thought I knew everything, but I guess I was wrong. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. All I could feel was an overwhelming sense of betrayal and loss. Sarah tried to explain, but she was crying so much she couldn't speak. She said it happened at the party after we got engaged. Mike had gone up to her and told her she was making a mistake getting married to me. He played on her insecurities, telling her she could do better and that he could give her everything I couldn't. It wasn't a one-night thing. It was a long-term thing. They'd been having an affair for months. I kicked Sarah out that night. I couldn't stand to look at her or be in the same room with the woman who had deceived me so completely. She begged me to forgive her, explaining that it was a mistake and that she loved me, but all I could think about was how many times she had lied to my face and been with my brother while wearing the ring I had given her. After Sarah left, I spoke to Mike. I don't remember what I said. it was all a bit of a blur of anger and pain. He tried to act casual, saying it was just a drunken mistake and didn't mean anything, but when I pushed him, he got defensive, saying maybe if I'd been a better fiancé, she wouldn't have come to him. I got mad. I jumped in my car and went to his apartment, determined to do something. After Sarah left, I got in touch with Mike. I don't really remember what I said, it was all a bit of a blur of anger and pain. He tried to act casual, saying it was just a drunken mistake and didn't mean anything, but when I pushed him, he got defensive, saying things like, maybe if you'd been a better fiancé she wouldn't have come to me. I got out of my car and went to his apartment, ready to do something that would make him regret what he said. I'm not sure what I was planning to do, but when I got there, our parents were already there. Mike apparently called them first, telling them a story about Sarah seducing him and how sorry he was, and you know what? They believed him, they always do. My mother immediately started lecturing me about forgiveness and family, while my father just stood there. I had a plan to make Mike regret what he said, but when I arrived, our parents were already there. Mike had apparently called them first, telling them a story about Sarah seducing him and how sorry he was. And, you know what? They believed him. My mother immediately started lecturing me about forgiveness and family, while my father simply stood there, arms crossed, looking disappointed in me but not in his beloved Mike. I tried to explain what had actually happened, but they wouldn't listen. They kept telling me that I needed to forgive Mike and support Sarah throughout her pregnancy because family comes first. I lost it. Years of pent-up resentment and anger spilled forth. I told them exactly how I felt about their twisted sense of devotion, how they'd always been more into Mike, never had my back or supported me. I told Mike he wasn't my brother anymore, he was dead to me. I told my parents they had the son they'd always wanted because I wasn't around. I stormed off, ignoring their cries and pleas. I drove for hours, with no destination in mind, just wanting to get away from it all. When I eventually... They'd always liked Mike better than me and never stuck up for me. I told Mike he wasn't my brother anymore, that he was dead to me. I told my parents they could have the son they'd always wanted because I wasn't the one for them. I stormed off, ignoring their cries and pleas. I drove for hours with no destination in mind, just a desire to get away from everything and everyone. When I eventually got home, I found dozens of missed calls and messages. Sarah begged for another chance, while Mike kept alternating between apologizing and accusing. Most of the calls, though, were from my parents, who demanded that I grow up and make amends. I ignored them all, rarely eating or sleeping. I called in sick, using up all my vacation days. I couldn't face anyone and I couldn't handle the idea of explaining. When I got home, I found a ton of missed calls and messages. Sarah begged for another chance, while Mike kept alternating between apologizing and accusing. Most of the messages, though, were from my parents, who insisted I mature and make things right. I ignored them all, hardly eating or sleeping. I called in sick from work, using up all my holiday days. I just couldn't face anyone and couldn't deal with the idea of explaining what had happened. I just sat in my apartment, thinking about every detail of my relationship with Sarah and every interaction with Mike, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. It's been 3 months now. I've moved to a new apartment, changed my phone number and started treatment to deal with all of this. But my family won't give up. Even though I've tried to cut them off, they keep on. I've been trying to work out what went wrong in my relationship with Sarah and Mike. I moved out of my old apartment, changed my phone number and started seeing a counselor to get through all this, but my family won't give up. They're still getting involved in my life. They've been turning up at my office, trying to talk me into forgiving Mike. My mom's been in the car park, wailing about how I'm ripping the family apart. My dad's left some pretty harsh voicemails, telling me to man up and forgive Mike. Mike's been trying to talk to me a few times, but I've managed to avoid him so far. They've even sent flying monkeys disguised as extended family members to try and make me forgive Mike. Aunts, uncles and cousins I haven't spoken to in years are suddenly calling, telling me how important family is and how I should let bygones be bygones. It's as if they're in another reality where Mike and Sarah made a little mistake rather than a life-altering one. Altering one. I got a message from Sarah yesterday, she's keeping the baby and intends to I got a message from Sarah yesterday saying she's keeping the baby and she and Mike are going to be co-parenting. Can you believe it? My parents are overjoyed to become grandparents, forgetting the circumstances and the harsh remarks they used to make when Sarah was with me. The letter was full of apologies and explanations, including how she and Mike discovered real love in this terrible situation. She even had the nerve to suggest that she hoped we could all become friends eventually, for the sake of the child. I'm at my wit's end. Part of me wishes to I'm torn between severing ties and starting over somewhere new. I'm torn between moving to another state, changing my identity and creating a new life where no one knows about this mess, and staying to fight to show them how messed up the situation is. I don't know what to do now. The treachery has impacted all aspects of my life, and I can't take being alone with my thoughts. I haven't even considered dating again. I feel so torn up about this situation. I can't stop thinking about it, and it's making me feel physically sick. I don't know what to do. I'm not even thinking about dating again because I'm so scared of trusting someone after everything that's happened. I've also lost friends over this. They think I should just forgive my family and be happy, but I can't. The idea of Sarah and Mike having a kid together, a child that should have been mine, is just so painful. I know it's not their fault, but it's still hard to deal with. I'm worried about trusting someone like that. I've also lost friends over this. Some people think I should just be happy and get back together with my family, even though they've hurt me the most. The idea of Sarah and Mike having a kid together, a child that should have been mine, is really hard for me to deal with. I know in my head that the baby isn't to blame for my parents lying and cheating, but I can't stop feeling bad about it. My parents have started talking about how I should be involved in my nephew's life and how I'll become an uncle. Just thinking about it makes me feel sick. How can I look at this kid and not see the ultimate symbol of my brother's betrayal? So, Reddit, here's my question, am I wrong for not forgiving my brother and ex? I'm not sure if I'm wrong to want to lose touch with my family over this. Any advice on how to proceed would be great, as I now feel like I'm drowning in a sea of treachery and gaslighting. I apologize for the long post. If you've made it this far, I appreciate it. Writing all of this down has been cathartic in a way. I'm not sure what I'm hoping to gain from sharing this, but it's been really helpful to get things out in the open. I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who's been so supportive. I'm amazed at the response, and I'll take some time to read all the comments. I just wanted to answer a few typical questions. 1. Yes, I've consulted a lawyer about getting a restraining order against my family, which is currently in progress. 2. I don't intend to have any contact with the baby. It's not the child's fault, but I can't become involved without losing my sanity. 3. For those who have inquired about I've spoken to HR about the situation. They know and they're cool about it. They've got security at the front desk and they've offered me the option to work from home more often. I'm grateful for their understanding. A lot of you have asked whether I've thought about moving to another city or state. I've thought about it, but I'm not going to. I've also spoken to my lawyer about getting a restraining order against my family. It's in progress. And finally, I don't intend to have any contact with the baby. I don't think it's the child's fault, but I can't get involved without losing my sanity. I've had a few people ask if I've thought about moving to another city or state, and the answer is yes. My company has offices in several other cities, so it would be possible to transfer. I'm thinking about the pros and cons of doing that. To those suggesting a DNA test, Sarah admitted the affair, and the timeline matches up. I can't see any reason to suspect the child is not Mike's, even if it was mine. I doubt I could ever look at that child without thinking about this. 6. I've been overwhelmed by the number of people who've had similar experiences. It's upsetting to realize how widespread this type of betrayal is, but it's also strangely comforting to know that I'm not alone. Thank you all for being vulnerable and sharing. 7. I've been thinking about the person who asked about taking legal action against Mike for alienation of affection. I looked into it, but it's not recognized in my state. Even if it were, I don't think I have the energy for a legal battle right now. A few people have said that Mike's behavior seems narcissistic. I've started reading about narcissistic personality disorder, and to be honest, a lot of it seems to ring true. It helps me understand, but it doesn't excuse some of the things he's done. Those who have asked about Sarah's family are as shocked and appalled as you'd expect. They've cut off communication with her and have reached out to offer their support, which is great. It's a small comfort, but I appreciate it. To the person who asked if I'd thought about having kids, honestly, this whole thing has made me wonder if I even want a family. But I'm trying not to make any major decisions while I figure everything out. I'll keep you posted if anything significant comes up, but for now, at the moment, I'm focusing on getting better and moving forward. Thanks again, Reddit. You've really helped me out. Your support and suggestions have given me a lot to think about, and you've been a huge help during this tough time. I might not be able to reply to every comment, but I promise I read them all, and there. I'm focusing on getting better and moving on. Thanks again, Reddit, you've helped more than you know. Your encouragement and suggestions have given me a lot to think about, and they've truly been a lifeline during this tough time. I may not be able to answer every comment, but please know that I read them all and they're making me feel less alone. Hello, Reddit. It's been about 2 weeks since my last post, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster. First, thank you all for your enormous support and suggestions. I never anticipated my post going so viral, and reading all of your responses has been both upsetting and oddly it's pretty shocking how often this kind of thing happens. The last few weeks have been rough, to say the least. Remember how I mentioned I was trying to get a restraining order, which turned into a massive drama? My lawyer submitted the paperwork and we scheduled a hearing. I figured it'd be a breeze, considering all the evidence I had. It's pretty shocking how often this kind of thing happens. The last few weeks have been rough, to say the least. Remember how I said I was working on getting a restraining order? Well, that turned into a bit of a nightmare. My lawyer filed the paperwork and we had a hearing arranged. I thought it would be a breeze, given all the evidence of ongoing harassment, but I was wrong. My parents showed up at the court with their own lawyer, this fancy guy in an expensive suit who probably charges more per hour than I do in a week. They tried to make it look like I was the one going crazy, saying I was tearing the family apart over some silly misunderstanding, like Mike had stumbled and the harassment hasn't stopped, but at least I've got some legal protection now. My parents turned up at the court with their own lawyer, a posh guy in an expensive suit who probably charges more per hour than I do in a week. They tried to make it look like I was the crazy one, saying I was ripping the family apart over a simple misunderstanding, as if Mike had stumbled and fallen into my fiance. Luckily, the judge didn't believe them. She gave Mike a restraining order and my parents, but only after my mother fell into tears in court and my father glared at me as if I had committed murder. The look on Mike's face, though. If looks could kill, I would be dead by the time we left the courthouse. My fiancée has fallen into my family. Luckily, the judge didn't believe it. She gave the restraining order to Mike and my parents, but only after my mother fell into tears in court and my father glared at me as if I had committed murder. Mike's face was a picture, though. If looks could kill, I would be dead. He tried to come up to me as we were leaving the courthouse, but my lawyer stepped in between us and told him about the restraining order. Mike just laughed and said this wasn't over and that I couldn't hide behind a piece of paper forever. I'd be lying if I said his words didn't shake me, but at the very least I have some legal protection. The job situation has been another nightmare. Remember when I mentioned that my family had been showing up at my workplace? This came to a head last week. I was in a meeting with a customer when my assistant told me my mother was in the lobby and causing a fuss. Apparently, she had brought a photo album and was trying to show my colleagues. I'll tell you, it's been a total nightmare. You remember when I said my family kept turning up at my workplace? Well, this got really bad last week. I was in a meeting with a customer when my assistant told me my mum was in the lobby, causing a fuss. She'd brought a photo album and was trying to show my colleagues pictures of Mike and me when we were babies. She was going on about how close her boys used to be. I excused myself from the meeting and went down to the lobby, where I found my mum surrounded by a bunch of people who looked pretty uncomfortable. I had to run out of the meeting for a second. My mum was telling everyone about how Mike and I used to bathe together as toddlers. She saw me and tried to rush over, talking about a baby shower, but I cut her off. I told her she had to go right away or I would call the police and have her removed for trespassing and breaking the restraining order. She looked like she was going to have a heart attack. After everything they had put me through, I couldn't care. Security let her out, and I had to spend the next hour fixing things with my boss and colleagues. Luckily, most of the workers understood, but I could tell that some were wondering what kind of drama I was bringing into the office. But it was the fight with Mike that really threw everything off track. Last Saturday I was at the gym, trying to let out some frustration on the punching bag, because I was so into my training. I didn't notice anyone approaching me until I heard his voice and swung around to find Mike smirking at me, as if he hadn't just broken the restraining order. He began speaking loudly enough for anyone surrounding to hear, so I ordered him to go, but he laughed and said he'd tell them. He told me I'd threatened him and Sarah, and that's when I lost it. I swiped at him, and my first hit landed on his jaw. He stumbled backward before lunging at me, and we ended up on the floor, trading blows like kids again. This time, there were no parents to separate us, no one telling me to be the bigger person and let Mike win. I got a few good hits in before the gym staff separated us. Mike's nose was bleeding and I could feel my own swelling shut. We were both shrieking, trying to get free and get back at each other. The gym manager threatened to call the police, which ultimately shook me out of it. I grabbed my stuff and fled. I was driving home, still shaking from adrenaline, when I received a call from someone I didn't know. I answered, even though I knew better. Sarah was shouting about how I'd broken Mike's nose and he might need surgery. I couldn't help laughing at how ridiculous it was that she was upset with me after what they'd all done. I apologized if I'd upset her little boyfriend, who she'd been sleeping with behind my back for months. She started sobbing and complaining. She was worried about how anxious she was, how the baby could sense her pain, and how selfish I was. I hung up and blocked her number. Afterwards, the news spread quickly through our social circle. My phone was flooded with texts from friends and family, some supporting me, others criticizing me for assaulting my poor defenseless brother. Sarah's parents, I told her how worried I was about her and the baby, and how I could be so selfish. I hung up and blocked her number. After the fight, there was a lot of drama. The news spread quickly among our friends and family. I got loads of texts, some supporting me and some criticizing me for attacking my poor brother. Sarah's parents got in touch again to say they supported me and that they didn't like what their daughter had done. It didn't really help, but I'll take what I can. The restraining order doesn't seem to be working anymore. Mike has shown that he is willing to break it, and I'm worried about what he'll do next. The legal problems have been a nightmare. My lawyer called me the day after the gym incident with Mike. Apparently, he's filed assault accusations against me. I told him what happened, how Mike violated the restraining order and provoked me. My lawyer groaned and said we'd fight it, but it might be a tough struggle, considering that I threw the first punch. We're in the process of bringing our own charges against Mike for breaking the restraining order. My lawyer is convinced that this will benefit our case, but nothing is guaranteed. I've had to give police statements, show them my injuries, and justify defending myself against my own brother, which is humiliating. Mike and I have been banned from the gym for life. I can't blame them, but it's unfortunate that the gym was one of the few places where I felt like I could let out some of my frustration in a healthy manner. My cousin Amy, who I've always been close to, called me the other day. She's taken a lot of flack from her family for supporting me, but she's staying strong. She told me what was going on behind the scenes. Apparently, my parents have been telling everyone that I'm having a mental breakdown. They say that Sarah and Mike's relationship began after Sarah and I split up, and that I'm just envious and can't let go, according to Amy. Most of the family is skeptical, but some are. It's annoying to know they're spreading false information about me while I'm trying to recover. Things at work have been, let's say, difficult after the incident with my mother in the lobby and the argument with Mike, which went viral on local social media. I can sense I'm finding it hard to let go, as Amy says. The family are pretty skeptical, but some of them are. It's annoying to know they're spreading false information about me while I'm trying to get back on my feet. Things at work have been pretty tough since the incident with my mother in the lobby and the argument with Mike, which went viral on local social media. I can tell my colleagues are on edge around me. My manager called me into his office earlier this week. He said he valued me as an employee and realized I'm going through a tough time, but then he dropped the bombshell that he thinks it would be best if I took a leave of absence until things calmed down. He suggested we call it a personal sabbatical, which I thought was a bit rich as I'm sure he's got plenty of paid time off already. I wanted to argue and tell him that work is the only thing keeping me sane right now, but I knew he'd already made his mind up, so I agreed, thanked him for his understanding, and started packing up my office. As I was leaving, I overheard two of my colleagues. I was recommended a personal sabbatical, which I paid for. I wanted to tell him that work is the only thing keeping me sane right now, but I knew the choice had already been made, so I agreed, thanked him for his understanding, and began to pack up my office. As I was leaving, I overheard two of my coworkers discussing how my brother got my fiancée pregnant. I slammed my office door louder than required as I exited, taking some little satisfaction in watching them jump. I'd be lying if I said none of this was impacting me. I've started taking long drives at night to get out of my flat. Sometimes, I find myself parked outside my former place, the one I lived with Sarah, wondering how my life. I slammed my office door as I left, relishing the moment of satisfaction as I watched them jump. I am not going to lie, this whole situation is having an impact on me. I've started taking long drives at night to get away from it all. Sometimes, I find myself parked outside my old place, the one I lived with Sarah, wondering how my life got so messed up. In the midst of all this commotion, I received support from an unexpected source, Sarah's younger sister, Emma. Emma contacted me on social media, apologizing for her sister's conduct and offering her support. At first, I was skeptical, what if this was a trick? But after speaking with her, I realized she is equally disgusted by Sarah's behavior as I am. She's been telling me about I got a bit lost in the middle of all this drama. I got some support from a bit of an unexpected place, Sarah's younger sister, Emma. Emma messaged me on social media, saying sorry for how her sister had acted and telling me she was supporting me. At first, I wasn't sure, what if she was trying to pull a trick on me? But after we had a chat, I realized she was as sick as I was about Sarah's behavior. She's been telling me all about what's been going on in Sarah and Mike's lives. It seems like they've moved in together and are acting like they didn't ruin a lot of people's lives just to get together. Emma says Sarah's been trying to make herself look like the victim, crying to anyone who'll listen about how she never meant to hurt anyone and how she and Mike are soulmates who found each other against all odds. It makes me sick. It makes me sick to my stomach, but I appreciate Emma keeping me in the loop. After all, knowledge is power, even if it is information I'd rather not have. The social media environment has been a nightmare. I've always been a rather private person, but this event has thrown me into the spotlight. Someone, probably one of Mike's friends, posted about our gym feud on a local Facebook page. It didn't mention our names, but it described the incident in enough detail for anyone who knows us to figure it out. The comment section became a total war zone. Some people defended me, saying that Mike received what he deserved, while others described me as unstable and said I needed to be locked up. I made the mistake of looking at some of the comments one night after having way too many beers. I didn't mention any names, but the description was enough to let everyone know what had happened. Some people jumped to conclusions and started attacking me, while others were more supportive. I made a mistake one night, after having a few too many beers, by reading some of the comments. I ended up throwing my phone across the room, and the screen broke. Since then, I've deleted most of my social media accounts. I can't deal with all the notifications and messages from people I haven't spoken to in years, who are suddenly asking about my personal life after everything that's happened. I've realized that I can't stay in this situation. I've made a mistake. I threw my phone across the room so hard the screen broke. Since then, I've cancelled most of my social media accounts. I can't deal with all the notifications and messages from people I haven't spoken to in years who suddenly want to know all the juicy details about my personal life. With everything that has happened, I've realized that I can't stay in this city any longer. There are too many memories and chances to run into Sarah, Mike, or my parents. I've started looking for internal moves, and there's a promising opportunity in our Seattle office. It's not ideal. I've never been a fan of continual rain, but at this point I'd move to the moon to avoid all of this turmoil. I haven't made any final decisions yet, but the concept of a fresh start is. It's become a bit of a never-ending cycle of rain, and I'm at the point where I'd move to the moon to get away from all this drama. I haven't made any final decisions yet, but the idea of a fresh start is becoming more and more appealing. A new city, a new apartment, a new life where no one recognizes me as the guy whose brother cheated on his fiancée. My parents have been unusually quiet since the restraining order was granted. I'm waiting for them to figure out a new method to force their way back into my life. Sarah has been telling everyone about her pregnancy. Emma tells me she's been posting loads of updates on social media, ultrasound photographs, belly shots and so on, saying how blessed she and Mike are, and how thrilled they are to start their family. Each new piece of information feels like a fresh wound, triggering the pain just as I thought I was beginning to recover. So that is where things stand right now. 2 weeks ago I thought my life couldn't get any worse, but it has. I'm still angry and hurt, but also tired. I am tired of having to justify myself, so Reddit, this is less of an update and more of a cry into the void. I don't know what I'm asking for right now, advice, pity, or a time machine that allows me to never introduce Sarah to my brother. Whatever happens next, I will try to. I'll keep you all in the loop. Your support has meant more to me than you'll ever know. It's nice to be reminded that there are still good people in the world, even when it feels like everyone is full of betrayal and deceit. Final update, hello Reddit, it's been a week since my last update, and I'm here with what I expect to be my final post on this whole disaster. First and foremost, I'd like to say. I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone for all your help and guidance. Your support has been a lifeline for me, especially during the tough times. So, where do I even start? So much has happened in the last 7 days, and I'm still trying to process it all. I guess I'll start with the big news, I'm moving. I took the plunge and accepted a transfer to the Seattle office. It wasn't an easy decision, but after I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone for all their help and guidance throughout this process. Your writings have been a lifeline to me during some of the toughest times of my life, so where do I even start? A lot has happened in just 7 days and I'm still trying to take it all in. I'll start with the big news, I'm moving to the Seattle office. It was a tough decision, but after everything that had happened, I felt I needed a fresh start. I made the decision after an especially tough day last week. I'd just come out of another meeting with my lawyer about Mike's assault allegations when I saw a note in my mailbox. It was from Sarah. I almost threw it away before opening it, but I was curious, and inside there was an ultrasound image and a handwritten note. After a particularly rough day last week, I decided it was time for a change. I was in a meeting with my lawyer about the Mike situation when I got a note in the mailbox. It was from Sarah, and it had an ultrasound pic and a note saying how happy she and Mike were about the baby. She said she hoped I could be happy for them and that the baby would be thrilled to have its uncle. I got mad before I could stop. I grabbed my phone, found Sarah's number, and called her. She picked up on the second ring, and I just let go. I told her exactly how I felt. I told her how I felt about her, Mike and their beautiful little family. I said I'd never want to do anything with that kid and that she, Mike and the baby could all go to hell. I wasn't my best self, but I felt like I finally shouted everything I'd been keeping back. Then I realized I couldn't stay in this city anymore. That same night, I called my supervisor and told him. I told her she was crazy if she thought I'd ever want to do anything with that kid, and that she, Mike and the baby could all go to hell. I wasn't on my best behavior, but I felt like I finally shouted everything I'd been keeping back. That's when I realized I couldn't stay in this city anymore. I called my supervisor that same night and told him I wanted to transfer to Seattle. He was relieved. I think he was worried about how all of this drama would affect the company. He promised to speed up the paperwork, and by the next morning, it was official. I had 2 weeks to collect my belongings and relocate across the nation. My family and social circle were quick to learn about my move. My parents were, unsurprisingly, outraged. They turned up at my place unexpectedly. I told him I wanted to move to Seattle, and he was pretty happy about it. I think he was worried about how all this drama would affect the company, though. He said he'd speed up the papers, and by the next morning, it was official. I had 2 weeks to get my stuff and move across the country. My family and social circle were quick to find out about my move. My parents were pretty shocked, as you'd expect. They turned up at my place out of the blue, trying to talk me out of it. My mum was crying and accusing me of abandoning the family, and my dad was furious and yelling at me for being selfish and immature. I didn't say anything, I just phoned the police and had them remove him for breaking the restraining order. When they let him out, my mum yelled at me that I'd regret it, that family was everything, and that I was wasting it. I immediately closed the door and went back to packing. Mike didn't react in the same way. He didn't try to contact me directly, probably because of the legal problems he was having at the time, but he did write a long message on social media about how some people can't handle seeing others happy and how he and Sarah were ignoring all the hate to focus on their new family. It was definitely intended for me, as he tried to make himself look like the victim. I'll admit, it stung. I saw that a lot of people had liked and commented on it, but I told myself that their opinion didn't matter because they didn't know the truth. After our phone call, Sarah's response was the most surprising. She spoke to her sister Emma, who had been keeping me updated on what was going on with Sarah and Mike. As I remember, Emma told me that Sarah had broken down and said that she realized what she and Mike had done was terrible and was scared of the future. My cousin Amy, bless her, offered to help me pack. She even told me more about what's going on with the family. Amy told me that my aunt, my mother's sister, had a heated argument with my mother, accusing her of always favoring Mike and pushing me away. My aunt complained that my parents were reaping the consequences of their years of favoritism. I can't say I was really glad to hear that someone was finally calling them out for their behavior. My lawyer told me that my move won't have any effect on the legal case that's currently pending. We're still pursuing charges against Mike for breaching the restraining order and defending the assault accusations he brought against me. My lawyer's pretty sure the judge will see through Mike's arguments, especially considering his history of breaching the order. I'm not feeling any better knowing someone's finally calling them out on their behavior. My lawyer says my move won't change the legal case that's happening right now. We're still going after Mike for breaking the restraining order and defending the assault accusations he made against me. My lawyer's pretty sure the judge will see through Mike's arguments, especially with his history of breaking the law. The restraining order, and the fact that I'm going across the nation, should show that I'm not a threat to Mike. That might help get his charges dropped. I am not sure if I'll post any more updates after this. Starting over is putting the past behind, and as helpful as this group has been, I think it's time for me to move on from talking about this. I need to focus on creating my new life instead of obsessing on the past. This is probably my last update. I just want to say thanks to Reddit for sticking with me. I'm moving to Seattle to start a whole new life, and I'm going to make the most of it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy our videos, please like, share and subscribe. Have a good day. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories.